What if every Pokemon trainer's teams truly reflected their personality, skills, and story? In this video, we'll explore that idea as I give new teams to every major Pokemon trainer. We'll journey through every region, all the way to Scarlet and Violet, including its DLC. And as always, we're starting with the Kanto region.
Good old Brock. There really isn't a lot I changed, to be honest. If anything, I'm actually gonna add a Pokemon. Since the standard for gym leaders nowadays is to have at least 3 Pokemon, that's gonna be the minimum I'm gonna be giving each, and Brock is short one. The team I have for him is Geodude, Rhyhorn, and Onix. I decided to add Rhyhorn because it's the Kanto rock type that fits the most with his team. I mean, they're gray, tough rock types, so that's an easy addition. Next up is Misty. Same as Brock, she's also short one. Her new team will be Psyduck, Wartortle, and Starmie. The Squirtle line is actually a really good fit for Misty, and I mean, she is a water type expert, so why wouldn't she use it? I feel like the gym leaders would use the starter of the region if it fits with their team's typing or theme, so expect some to show up from here on out. Lieutenant Surge. His team will be Voltorb, Electabuzz, and Raichu. Electabuzz fits Lieutenant Surge so well. He does have one during the Johto games, but I do feel like he should have had one since the very beginning, similar to his manga counterpart. Of course, that might be way too strong to face off early on into the games, but I'm not really taking that into account. This is just looking at what they'd have, regardless of levels and balancing and whatever, nobody really cares. Erica. Her team will be Ivysaur, Tangela, and Vileplume. Ivysaur fits Erica well, considering it has a flower bud slash bulb thing on its back. Goes well right alongside her Vileplume and the flower theme she's got going on. Koga. His team will be Golbat, Weezing, and Muck. This one was pretty interesting because it was just a matter of narrowing down his team to 3 Pokemon that would fit him the most. I decided to remove Venomoth since that's the ace of his daughter Janine, and I don't want them to have identical teams. We'll get to her when I do Johto. Plus, I just really never liked Venomoth for Koga, if I'm being honest. Sabrina. Her team will be Mr. Mime, Hypno, and Alakazam. Hypno is the newest addition, and it fits really well with Sabrina and her creepy psychicness, especially for her anime counterpart. It's like they were made for each other, so I don't know why she never had one. Let's just hope that she doesn't start kidnapping children with it. I feel like she would. Bling! Since he's one of the last gym leaders, he'll be having 4 Pokemon to up the challenge a bit. So because of this, his team doesn't really change. He gets Magmar, Ninetales, Rapidash, and Arcanine. Giovanni. Now, although he is the final gym leader, you gotta remember that he's actually the mob boss of Team Rocket. So will he really battle you fair and square using a type-specific team or number restriction? Nah, son. I see Giovanni's true team being Persian, Sandslash, Nidoking, Nidoqueen, and Rhydon. That last slot is for Mewtwo, but you know, you stop him before he does it. Now, since we're on the topic of Team Rocket, how about we take a little detour and talk about the Pokemon that should be used by the OG evil team. Surprisingly, I'm actually okay with the Pokemon they use because they fit them really well, but there's still a few new additions I made. Team Rocket Grunts should be using Rattata, Ekans, Sandshrew, Nidoran male and female, Zubat, Machop, Grimer, Ghastly, Drowsy, and Coughing. And obviously their evolutions are included for stronger grunts. Now, more importantly, let's look at the changes I'd make to the higher ups. Jesse and James. Their OG anime team really suits them, so they should have Arbok, Weezing, Victreebel, Lickitung, and Meowth. That's right. As for Archer, the team I give him is Golbat, Weezing, and Magmar. My reasoning for adding Magmar to his team is because during the Johto games, he has a Houndoom. But without it in Kanto, his team just becomes another generic Team Rocket grunt team. So I figured I'd give him a Kanto fire type to really spice up his team and make it stand out more. So Magmar it is. Okay, turns out he has one in the post game. Now on to the Elite Four. I'm gonna be honest with you though, Lorelei and Agatha have the same teams as they always do. There really isn't much that can be changed because of how scarce their typings are in the first generation. Same kinda goes for Bruno and Lance, but at least I was able to make a small change to theirs. His team will be Onix, Primeape, Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan, and Machamp. Alright, the change here is Primeape. I never really understood why Bruno didn't have one. I mean, they do have the same metal shackles on their arms and legs, so what gives? This is a way better fit than the Poliwrath he got in Let's Go. I feel like they just gave him that for like type coverage and stuff like that, I guess. But no, Primeape should have been Bruno's team member all along. Lance. His team will be Gyarados, Dragonair, Aerodactyl, Charizard, and Dragonite. I get why Let's Go gave him a Seadra, cause it's classified as the Dragon Pokemon and it evolves into Kingdra, but it doesn't really suit him. I say just give him a Dragonair like before so he can have some actual dragons on his team other than Dragonite. Sorry Charizard, no offense, but don't worry buddy, you'll always be a dragon to me. Trace. His team's the same. Next. Fine. I guess the one thing I'd like to say is that canonically, I think Raichu would be the true partner for Trace, while the player character gets Eevee. That's just me though. My reasoning is that if the player character gets a Pikachu that doesn't evolve, then they'd be just like Red. So that would kind of ruin the specialness of his unevolved Pikachu. Plus, Jolteon just seems way too cool for this goober. Blue. His team will be Gyarados, Alakazam, Machamp, Executor, Rhydon, and Charizard. This is what I believe to be the team to fit him the most when he first journeyed through the Kanto region to become the champ, and it's the team he'd use when he officially becomes gym leader right after Giovanni leaves. Green. Her team also doesn't change because I feel like the one she received in Let's Go fits perfectly. I even like that she has both a Clefable and Gengar, making a little wink at the old theory of Gengar being Clefable's shadow. I see you, Game Freak. And lastly, Red. This is what I believe should be Red's true canonical team. Pikachu, Arcanine, Lapras, Snorlax, Aerodactyl, and Venusaur. Pikachu, Snorlax, and Venusaur have always been a staple of Red's team, but as for the others, here's why they're here. Arcanine because it's what he'll eventually trade for Blue's Charizard, Lapras because that's what he'll trade for Green's Blastoise, and Aerodactyl because it's what he uses in the manga and I've always liked it for Red. This is the team I believe Red would have used when he first started his Pokemon journey. And with that, I've gone over all the major changes I've made to the Kanto Pokemon trainers.
Next up is the Johto region, and kicking us off is Faulkner. Now I get that he's the first gym leader of Johto, but did his team have to be this boring? His new team will be Spearow, Hoot Hoot, and Pidgeotto. I added Spearow since it looks a bit more fierce than a basic Pidgey, and also so Faulkner wouldn't just have the Pidgey family as a team. And Hoot Hoot is here because he needs at least one Johto representation. It's so annoying because there are some Johto gym leaders that use Pokemon from Kanto. Like, hello, you're a Johto gym leader, use Pokemon from your region. Bugsy. Sort of the same complaint I had with Faulkner. No Johto Pokemon in his original team. So he'll have Scyther, Spinarak, and Ledion. Ledion is a perfect choice considering the badge Bugsy gives you is literally a ladybug, so it makes no sense why he didn't have one. And Spinarak cause, you know, Johto bug. Whitney. Her team will be Jigglypuff, Furret, and Miltank. That damn Miltank. I got rid of her Clefairy since, you know, now it's a pure fairy type and it wouldn't really fit with her team anymore. Jigglypuff is a good replacement though since it has a lot of similarities with Clefairy anyways. And also it has the normal typing Whitney specializes in. And since Whitney loves cute Pokemon, what better Johto edition than Furret? You know why I chose it, so there's no need to explain any further. Morty. His team will be Haunter, Misdreavus, and Gengar. Now I get that there weren't that many ghost types back then, but it's kinda stupid to think that they just gave him the Ghastly line when Misdreavus exists. So here it is now. Chuck. From here on out, I'll be giving the gym leaders 4 Pokemon. So Chuck's team will be Heracross, Poliwrath, Machoke, and Hitmontop. I honestly love this for his team, cause all of these just look really good together. They're all bluish looking fighting types that I can totally see Chuck using. Jasmine. Her team will be Forretress, Magneton, Ampharos, and Steelix. Forretress is a defensive steel type, so it fits perfectly with Jasmine. As for Ampharos, I decided to add it since the one at the lighthouse is hers after all. I think she would use it even if it's not a steel type. Plus Magneton is part electric type, so there's still a little bit of consistency in her team. Price. His team will be Delibird, Stantler, Piloswine, and Dugong. Price is known as the Teacher of Winter's Harshness. So I decided his team should fully commit to that by not just being an ice team, but a winter themed team.
So Delibird and Stantler are actually a perfect fit since they represent Christmas, probably the most famous part of winter. I know Stantler isn't an ice type and it doesn't even learn any ice type moves, but it just fits too perfectly with this wintry team. Claire. Her team will be Gyarados, Lapras, Dragonair, and Kingdra. Lapras can actually learn a few dragon moves, and it's even used by Iris in Black 2 and White 2, so this Pokemon has a decent association with dragons already. And since Claire's team was already following this bluish aquatic dragon theme, I decided to follow through with that to help separate her team from Lance's. Now just like last time, before we go over the Elite Four, let's take a detour and talk about the evil team. Since Team Rocket returns in Johto, the Pokemon the Grunts use are pretty much the same as before, but with a few new additions. In Johto, Team Rocket also have the Oddish line, Spinarak line, and Murkrow. And now time for the executives. Archer. I put him first since there really isn't much of a change. His team will be the same as the one from the Kanto video, but now with the new addition of his ace Houndoom. Petrel, or Petrol, whatever. Instead of giving him, 5 coughings, I decided to make his new team a bit more diverse. He's supposed to be a master of disguise, so he should be ready for any situation. His team will be Raticate, Murkrow, Electrode, and Weezing. The Electrode and Murkrow are references to the ones that can be found at the Team Rocket HQ when you first encounter him. Proton. He's been labeled as the scariest out of the Team Rocket execs. Yeah, not with that team. His new team will be Golbat, Haunter, Arbok, and Nidoking. Ariana Grande. Her team will be Murkrow, Ariados, Arbok, and Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen, along with the Nidoking I gave Proton, are references to the ones that Giovanni has. Since Giovanni isn't present in Johto, I thought it would be really cool if his executives would have some similar Pokemon to him, that way his presence isn't truly forgotten. And the last little surprise before the Elite Four, Ucine. You actually battle him once, but since he's an important part of the Suicune storyline, I decided to give him a better team than his original. His new team will be Girafarig, Haunter, Electrode, Misdreavus, and Hypno. I decided to add 2 Johto Pokemon so he's not just a Kanto trainer. They really fit with this whole Mystery Man theme. Alright, now for the Elite Four. Will. His team will be Executor, Mr. Mime, Jinx, Slowking, and Xatu. I added Mr. Mime because it fits well with his whole magician theme. As for Slowking, I think it's a better option than Slowbro. We got a new Johto evolution for Slowpoke, so I don't know why they never gave him one. Koga. Now that he's an Elite Four member, he had to step his game up. So his team will be Crobat, Arbok, Weezing, Ariados, and Muck. I get why he had Fortress because it fit with his whole ninja theme, but I never really liked it for him. Plus, now he can have an Arbok similar to the one that he does in the manga. Also, his Weezing is back. Bruno. Pretty much the same team for him, but instead of Onix, he's keeping the Primeape I added for him in the last part. Next, Karen. Her team will be Houndoom, Murkrow, Sneasel, Gengar, and Umbreon. I added Sneasel here cause, hello, it's a sneaky dark type that fits perfectly with Karen's team. And now for the champion, Lance. I really wanted to shake up Lance's team so he wouldn't just have 3 Dragonites. Like, I get why they did it to make him more of a challenge and also to give him more dragons, but he really needs some variety. So his team will be Gyarados, Aerodactyl, Feraligatr, Charizard, Tyranitar, and Dragonite. Although Lance is a dragon tamer, his team was never really just dragon types because of how rare the type used to be. He's more of a trainer of ferocious dragon-like Pokemon, so I decided to stick with that theme instead. Feraligatr and Tyranitar fit perfectly since they're both really fierce and learn a good amount of dragon moves. This really makes his team a lot more diverse and makes his Dragonite a lot more special since it's the only one. Silver. Now it's time for your rival of the Johto games. Here's what I believe should be his true canonical team. Crobat, Alakazam, Sneasel, Scizor, Ursaring, and Feraligatr. Just like the manga, I think Totodile is the starter that Silver ends up with, while Ethan gets Cyndaquil and Chris/Lyra gets Chikorita. They all fit them really well. Scizor just looks cool and kinda matches Silver's red hair, so it works. And as for Ursaring, this Pokemon was used a lot by Paul in the anime. Its fearsome and brutal personality really fit him well. And since Paul was inspired by Silver, I think it suits him well too. And what do you know? Silver has one in the Pokemon manga. And there you have it, all of the team changes to all the major trainers in the Johto region. But you didn't think that was it, right? Cause now it's time to go over all the changes all the cancelled trainers should have gotten in the Johto games. So let's continue. Lieutenant Surge. His team is Raichu, Magneton, Electrode, Jolteon, and Electabuzz. Now that it's post-Elite 4, I believe all the cancelled gym leaders should use at least 5 Pokemon. Jolteon is a new addition here. It's another electric type that really fits his team. And also a little throwback to Pokemon Puzzle League, if you've played that. I did. No. Sabrina. Her team will be Mr. Mime, Slowbro, Espeon, Hypno, and Alakazam. Another reason why I gave Will Slowking is so that his team would be different from Sabrina's. While he gets the Johto Slowpoke evolution, Sabrina sticks with Kanto, which makes way more sense in this situation. She also keeps the Hypno I gave her last time. Erica. Her team is Tangela, Bellossom, Jumpluff, Venusaur, and Vileplume. She already gets Bellossom and Jumpluff in the Johto games. This was just a matter of keeping her ace Vileplume that gets removed for some reason, and evolving the Ivysaur I gave her last time. Misty. Her team will be Golduck, Gyarados, Azumarill, Blastoise, and Starmie. I'll never forget the first time Anime Misty whips out her Gyarados. It was so awesome. Because of that, she should definitely have it on her team when she's a lot tougher. As for Azumarill, going back to the anime, Misty does get an Azurill, so it works. Plus, the Marrow is just so freaking cute, and I can totally see Misty using one. Janine. Now here we have a new gym leader. Her team will be Crobat, Beedrill, Ariados, Weezing, and Venomoth. Even though Janine specializes in poison like her father, I didn't want them to have identical teams. She's her own person, so for Janine, I decided her team should have a more poisonous bug theme instead. Her ace is a Venomoth after all, so I think it works. Brock. His team will be Golem, Sudowoodo, Rhydon, Kabutops, and Onix. I removed Omastar because it seems way more like a water type and doesn't really fit as well into Brock's rock theme as much as Kabutops does. So its replacement is Sudowoodo, which is here cause, you know, the anime. Good fit. Blaine. His team will be Magmar, Ninetales, Rapidash, Macargo, and Arcanine. Same team as last time but with the addition of Macargo. Blue. Alright, now that he's a gym leader, his team is a bit more different this time around. Now he has Pidgeot, Arcanine, Alakazam, Executor, Gyarados, and Tyranitar. Like I said in the last video, Red obtains Charizard by trading his Arcanine, so that's how Blue ends up with it. As for Tyranitar, I added it because I feel like Blue would have a pseudo to beef up his team now that his starter is gone. Works well, and he does get one in the post game of Fire Red and Leaf Green. Green. Although she isn't in the Johto games, I still think it would be cool to show off the team she would have had if she was in the Johto games. She would have Ninetales, Victreebel, Gengar, Granbull, Lapras, and Kangaskhan. Again, going back to Red, he trades his Lapras for her Blastoise, so that's how she ends up with it. As for Granbull, I added it because I wanted her to have at least one new Johto Pokemon, and Granbull works. She also has one in the manga. Man, I am on a roll with these manga references today. And last but not least, Red. His team will be the exact same team from the original Gold and Silver, and that is Pikachu, Snorlax, Venusaur, Charizard, Blastoise, and Espeon. I never liked how every single game after Crystal they got rid of Red's Espeon. It was a great addition and gave him way more type coverage, so I'm bringing it back. Game Freak, suck on that.
It's now time for Hoenn.
Roxanne. Now Roxanne has always been known as a studious trainer, but I never really knew what that had to do with rock types. Luckily in Oras, they gave her gym kind of an archaeology/museum theme, so now her rock speciality makes way more sense. So her team will be Anorith, Lileep, and Nosepass. She's gonna get the first stage fossils cause she probably loves to study them. Brawly. His team will be Meditite, Tyrogue, and Makuhita. I decided to give Brawly a Tyrogue cause, I don't know, Machop just seems too generic. Tyrogue is more unique because of his whole wrestling focused design. I feel like it better fits with Brawly's redesign in Oras where he's a lot more battle ready. Watson. His team will be Plusle, Magneton, and Manectric. Plusle seems like a Pokemon he would start out with. It's small, cute, electric, and most importantly, from Hoenn. Minun could honestly fit too, but since he's an early gym leader, I decided to just stick with 3 Pokemon and, you know what, I'll add it, it's fine. Flannery. Her team will be Combuskin, Camerupt, and Torkoal. Her team follows this volcanic theme, and although Slugma and Magcargo would be a great option, I decided not to have them to add Combuskin. I think she'd use one because she's a fire-type Hoenn trainer. This is especially the case if she got a cute little Torchic. I could definitely see her having that. So yeah, awkward-ass Combuskin is in. Norman. His team has always been kinda boring. Like, we get it, you have the whole slacking line. Whoop-de-doo. The normal type is boring enough as it is, buddy, don't make it any worse for them. His new team will be Linoon, Loudred, and Slacking. I went with Linoon cause he's a quick boy, Loudred cause he's a loud and crazy boy, and Slacking cause he's slacking. They all vary in personality and battle style, which is the whole point of the Slacking line in the first place. Winona. Now the gym leaders will be receiving 4 Pokemon, and Winona's team will be Swellow, Pelipper, Tropius, and Altaria. Winona has a theme that's all about mastery over the air and such, so instead of focusing on just birds like Falkner does, I wanted her team to feel more tied with nature. So that's why we have the combo of Tropius, who's a flying dinosaur tree, and Pelipper, the rain summoner, at least in later gens. This team is full of varying types that really represent the region of Hoenn. Tate and Liza. Now yeah, we know that they're a duo that uses double battles with Solrock and Lunatone, but I'm giving them 2 more Pokemon that fit with their astral theme. Otherwise, they might as well just be rock-type gym leaders as well. Their team will be Solrock, Lunatone, Claydol, and Starmie. Claydol is an addition they get in Emerald, but Starmie is the new one I added. It's literally a star that's theorized to be from space, so it fits with these space-themed gym leaders. Juan! I'll be saving Wallace for the Elite Four, so for now, we're just going over the new 8th gym leader of Hoenn, who didn't make it into Oras. His team will be Seaking, Wishcash, Celio, and Kingdra. His original team is honestly fine the way it is, minus Love Disc of course, cause it sucks. His Crawdaunt was fine too, but I decided to put Seaking instead cause it looks way more elegant, and it fits really well with Juan's style and personality. I really like the mix. And that wraps up all the Hoenn gym leaders. And as always, before the Elite Four, let's take a look at the evil teams. We've got 2 this region. I'll be starting with Team Magma first. These are the Pokemon I believe should be used by their grunts. Zubat, Coughing, Slugma, Poochyena, Numel, Houndour, and Magmar. Originally, Team Magma was missing a surprising amount of fire types, which is why we have new additions like Magmar and Houndour. Even Slugma makes the cut since it wasn't really used by Team Magma. As for Team Aqua, they're all about expanding the sea, so of course I'll be adding a few more water types. Their grunts should have Zubat, Grimer, Corphish, Poochyena, Quillfish, Tentacool, and Carvanha. The additions here are Tentacool and Quillfish. They're poisonous water types, so I think that Team Aqua would use them to help achieve their evil agenda. We also get Corphish, who evolves into the evil type, Crawdaunt. Now when it comes to these teams' admins, they kinda suck. Their teams usually consist of copying 1 or 2 of their boss's Pokemon and that's it. I mean, I know you admire them, but come on now. Their team should be at least a little bit more different and make them unique and stand out. Let's start with Team Magma's Courtney. Her team will be Mightyena, Golbat, and Houndoom. I wanted her team to focus more on the dark type side of Team Magma. Meanwhile, Tabitha will be focusing on the fire type side. His team will be Magmar, Weezing, and Camerupt. Now for Team Aqua's admins, Matt. His team will be Tentacruel, Muck, and Sharpedo. His team is more focused on water. Meanwhile, Shelly, she'll have Mightyena, Golbat, and Crawdaunt. This team focuses more on the dark type side like Courtney. Maxie. It's time for the Team Magma boss, and his team will be Mightyena, Crobat, Magcargo, Magmar, Weezing, and Camerupt. The new addition is Magcargo. It's a great fit for Team Magma since it's a magma snail. This is why I didn't give one to Flannery, so she wouldn't end up having a Team Magma team basically. And Magmar wouldn't hurt to have either. Archie. His team will be Mightyena, Crobat, Tentacruel, Crawdaunt, Muck, and Sharpedo. Tentacruel is a new addition, and so is Crawdaunt. These 2 are a good fit for Archie's evil water team. And now that we've got the evil teams out of the way, it's time to move on to the Elite Four. Sydney. His team will be Shiftry, Zangoose, Crawdaunt, Houndoom, and Absol. To be honest, his original team is actually pretty good for him. The only difference is the addition of Houndoom instead of basic-ass Mightyena, but also Zangoose. I know it's not a dark type, but it's a pretty edgy normal type that he has in the manga, so it's a good fit to be honest. Phoebe. Her team will be Misdreavus, Shedinja, Sableye, Bayonet, and Dusclops. I give her Misdreavus because it's a feminine looking ghost type, so it's a good fit for the Ghost Girl Elite 4 member. As for Shedinja, it's here because it's another Hoenn ghost type that could be used as well. Glacia. Her team will be Glalie, Dugong, Cloyster, another Glalie, and Walrein. I tried to avoid giving her a bunch of Celios, so that's why Dugong and Cloyster are here. Dugong specifically makes for a good companion to Walrein, so I like it here. Drake. His team will be Shelgon, Sceptile, Kingdra, Flygon, and Salamence. Sceptile is definitely the most interesting addition. I added it because it learns some decent dragon moves and even gains the dragon typing when it mega evolves, so it already has some relation to dragons. Now for the champion of Emerald, Wallace. His team will be Wailord, Gyarados, Lantern, Ludicolo, Swampert, and Milotic. Instead of Wishcash, I gave him Swampert since it's already a better water and ground type. The Water Master Wallace would definitely use one. As for Lantern, it's another great water type that isn't weak to electric attacks. It definitely makes his team a bit more diverse. And now for the true champion, Steven Stone. His team will be Skarmory, Steelix, Aerodactyl, Scizor, Aggron, and Metagross. I think Aerodactyl is truly the best fossil Pokemon for Steven to have, and he even gets one in the post-game of Oras. And since he's all about looking for stones, what's a better and more iconic steel type than Steelix? As for Scizor, he's here cause he just looks cool, man. I love him. Now for your rival, Brendan or May. Now don't get this confused for the player characters team cause they won't be getting any. I feel like that's left for the players to decide. This is what I believe should be the true canonical team of your opposite gender rival. Swellow, Breloom, Wailord, Plusle or Minun, depending on the gender, and Blaziken. I'm mostly looking at this from the point of view that May should be the one who ends up with Blaziken. It fits her so well considering it starts out as a cute little Torchic. The rest of the team is just made up of Pokemon they've used throughout the Hoenn games and the ones I think work the best. Well, except for Plusle and Minun. I added them because I feel like it would make way more sense for your rival to use them instead of freaking Raichu and Oras. Like, I get that Pikachu is the mascot and all, but I just hate when Game Freak slaps it onto a rival because of that. So Plusle and Minun it is. Zinnia. Although she wasn't in the original Hoenn games, she does make her debut in Oras, so she's still technically a Hoenn character. Her team will be Noivern, Flygon, Tyrantrum, Altaria, and Salamence. Oh yeah, and Aster. Now yeah, she was introduced in Generation 6, but I didn't really like that most of her team was filled with Kalos Pokemon than with Hoenn. The Draconids are supposed to be from Hoenn, so that's why I gave her Flygon. It really makes her team stick with this flying dragon theme, which is really cool. Well, except for Tyrantrum, but he's an edgy dragon, so Zinnia should keep it. Let's finish things off with the Hoenn Battle Frontier Brains. That sounds very weird to say. Noland. Uses literally any Pokemon, so we're skipping him. Greta. Her team will be Hariyama, Heracross, and Medicham. I love how the anime made her focus on fighting types. She is the head of the battle arena, which is a perfect place to train fighting types, so it works. That's why she's getting Hariyama and Medicham. As for Heracross, it's yet another fighting type that she actually uses in-game. Tucker. His team will be Typhlosion, Swampert, and Salamence. In-game Tucker has a Charizard, but I don't really like it for him. If he really wants a flashy fire-type starter, then he can have Typhlosion. It's an awesome Pokemon that needs more love, and it doesn't mess with his theme of mixing fire and water, so it's good. Also, red for fire, blue for water, you get both with Salamence, which makes purple for Tucker. That's why. That's the team. That's the theme, I think, right? Lucy. This one is easy. Her team is all about serpents, so she gets Seviper, Steelix, and Milotic. Next, Spencer. This one was a bit tricky to put together, but ultimately, I decided that his team should have a nature theme, but also be all about bulk. So he gets Cradily, Forretress, and Slacking. Cradily has really high special defense, while Forretress has really high physical defense. As for Slacking, I mean, come on, it's Slacking. Annabelle. Her team will be Alakazam, Snorlax, and Metagross. I decided to mix up her theme from the anime where she's strictly a psychic type user with a team that's just about being really strong hitters. So that's why I came up with this team. She doesn't have a Salamence anymore as I decided Tucker should be the one to have it, but it's alright because she has the other Hoenn pseudo-legendary, Metagross. And lastly, Brandon. This one is pretty obvious. Just like the games in anime, Brendan has all the Reggies. There aren't really any other Pokemon I could see him with. These guys are what he's known for.
Surprise, it's Wally's turn. His team will be Altaria, Roselia, Masquerain, Delcatty, Flygon, and Mega Gallade. I like Wally's theme of personal growth, despite his weak beginnings due to his illness, and I think the new additions perfectly fit with that. Masquerain is a Pokemon that goes through quite the drastic change compared to his pre-evolution, and his Intimidate ability perfectly represents how intimidating Wally can be with his new surprise strength. Same could be said for Flygon, who also drastically changes as it evolves to become this elegant and powerful Pokemon. It also fits with his color scheme. Now that we're done with Hoenn, we move on to the Sinnoh region.
Rourke. I never liked how his team was basically Brock 2.0, so let's change that. His team will be Onix, Larvitar, and Cranidos. Onix, he gets to stay as it evolves into Steelix, a Pokemon Rourke's father has. I think that's a really cool connection that links the two. So that means Geodude is the one out, and Larvitar is in. It's a Pokemon that's born deep underground, so I think it's a good fit for the miner Rourke who would probably find one mining underground. Plus, he even has a Tyranitar in the post-game of Platinum. It's destined to happen anyways. Gardenia. Her team will be Grottle, Leafeon, and Roserade. I decided to evolve her Turtwig as I think it should be a bit more stronger by the time you reach her. As for Leafeon, I added it because it fits way better with Gardenia's forest theme than Cherrim did. Yeah, it's a cute Gen 4 grass type, but I honestly think Leafeon's a better choice. Maylene. Her team will be Meditite, Monferno, and Lucario. Machoke is such a generic fighting type that almost every fighting type gym leader has. So to switch things up a bit, I'm giving her Monferno, which is a solid choice to be honest. She also has an Infernape in the Pokemon World Tournament, so it's not that crazy of a choice. Crasher Wake. His team will be Prinplup, Poliwrath, and Floatzel. Prinplup is here to round out all the Sinnoh starters. Poliwrath is such an obvious choice though. Crasher Wake is known to be a wrestler, so of course he should have a fighting water type. Fantina. From this point onwards, I'm giving the gym leaders 4 Pokemon, so Fantina should get Dusclops, Gengar, Drifblim, and Mismagius. This team is just a mix of the Pokemon she uses in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. They're a great fit honestly. I decided to evolve her Duskull even though it happens a lot later, but it just looks a lot better with all these evolved ghost types. Byron. His team will be Steelix, Bronzor, Lairon, and Bastiodon. The new addition is Lairon, since it's a Steel-type Pokemon that digs for the iron ore that it eats. Great fit for the Steel-type miner Byron. Candice. Her team will be Sneasel, Mamoswine, Abomasnow, and Frostlass. This is basically her Platinum team, which is honestly a perfect fit for her. I decided to evolve her Piloswine though, as I feel like Mamoswine suits her a lot better. Volkner. His team will be Jolteon, Manectric, Luxray, and Electivire. I wanted his team to basically consist of furry electric types. I know it sounds weird, but that's kind of the theme he was going for anyway. So the new addition is Manectric, which really fits well alongside Jolteon and Luxray. And now that we're done with the gym leaders, let's move on to the evil team of Sinnoh, Team Galactic. These are the Pokemon I believe should be used by their grunts. Zubat, Magnemite, Glameow, Stunky, Bronzor, Skorupi, Krogunk, Abra, and Drowsy. These Pokemon consist of pre-evolved ones used by their admins, obviously, but also a few new additions I made. Since Team Galactic is all about space, I think adding a few more psychic types like Abra and Drowsy help contribute to that astral theme. Now for the admins. Mars. Her team will be Golbat, Magneton, and Perugly. I decided to add Magneton as it would be a great Pokemon to have alongside with her in the Valley Windworks mission. You know, where she wanted to steal energy and whatnot, so that works. Jupiter. Her team will be Golbat, Kadabra, and Skuntank. I never liked how most of the Team Galactic admins share basically the same Pokemon minus their ace, so in this team, I gave her Kadabra. Since I wanted Team Galactic to have a bit more of a psychic focus, I figured I should just give her one. Saturn. His team doesn't really change. It's Golbat, Bronzong, and Toxicroak. Only real change is evolving his Bronzor. And finally, the Team Galactic leader, Cyrus. His team will be Gyarados, Bronzong, Houndoom, Honchkrow, Drapion, and Weavile. So there are 2 new additions here. I decided to replace Crobat since it's a Pokemon that was used by the last evil team leaders. I don't want things to get redundant.
so I replaced it with Drapion. It's a menacing looking Pokemon that makes Cyrus's team look a lot more threatening. As for Bronzong, it's here to give Cyrus just one more Pokemon so he can have a full team. And now that we've gone over the evil team, it's time to move on to the Elite Four. Aaron. His team will be Yanmega, Scizor, Vespiquen, Armaldo, and Drapion. Platinum did a good job of beefing up his team, but I feel like he just needs one more change. I added Armaldo because it's a tough looking bug type that'll make things a bit more trickier thanks to its rock typing. You ain't gonna sweep him with fire moves, that's for sure. Bertha. Her team will be Gastrodon, Gliscor, Nidoqueen, Hippowdon, and Rhyperior. Whiscash is a good choice for her, but why have that when she could just have the Sinnoh Water ground type? So that's why she has Gastrodon. As for Nidoqueen, it's here because it's a great fit for Bertha. Makes her look a lot more tougher, and it's way more unique and exciting compared to a Golem. No offense Golem fans, it's just that everyone has the Geodude line for some reason. The boy Flint. His team will be Rapidash, Houndoom, Camerupt, Magmodar, and Infernape. For Flint, I decided to remove Flareon cause it's kinda trash and gave him Camerupt instead. Not the best typing wise, but you know, beefs up his team a bit more than freaking Flareon could. Lucian. His Platinum team is honestly perfect, so no changes for me here. So with that, let's move on to the champion of Sinnoh, Cynthia. Now her team is dangerous, but I still wanted to make a few changes. Maybe it won't feel as badass as her original team, but I think Cynthia should have Dusknoir, Togekiss, Roserade, Lucario, Glaceon, and Garchomp. Since Cynthia is the champion of Sinnoh, I wanted her team to reflect one of the most famous aspects of this region, the new evolutions. That's why Dusknoir is here instead of Spiritomb. As for Glaceon, it's a Pokemon she uses in Black 2 and White 2 and in the anime, so it works well. Now for the rivals. First up is Barry. His team will be Staraptor, Luxray, Roserade, Floatzel, Snorlax, and Infernape. I believe Barry's canonical starter is meant to be Chimchar, which is why I gave him an Infernape. A monkey Pokemon is honestly a good fit for the energetic Barry. As for Luxray, I have it here because Barry actually uses one in the manga. It's another Pokemon that he's meant to have. Next up is Dawn. For the purpose of this video, she's going to represent the opposite gender rival, or, you know, just character, because she's not really a rival. Canonically, I see her using Piplup for obvious reasons. So her final team should be Clefable, Kadabra, Rapidash, Lopunny, and Empoleon. She doesn't get a fully evolved team in the games as she plays a pretty minor role, but I decided to change that. This is a mix of Pokemon she uses in-game, along with some of the Pokemon her manga counterpart uses. And now that we're done with the rivals, it's time to move on to the Sinnoh Battle Frontier. I won't be doing Thornton or Argenta as they literally use any Pokemon. So let's start off with Dahlia. Her team will be Ludicolo, Porygon Z, and Dusknoir. On top of being a dancer, her facility follows the arcade theme, so Porygon Z is a perfect fit. One, because it kinda has to do with technology, and since it learns Tri-Attack, it can cause different statuses like paralysis, burns, and even freezing. Just like the gimmick the facility presents before a battle. Dirac. His team will be Empoleon, Licky, and Gallade. Empoleon and Gallade are Pokemon he already uses. As for Licky, I have it here because its design fits perfectly with Dirac's butler aesthetic and castle theme of the Frontier facility. Palmer. His team will be Rhyperior, Snorlax, and Dragonite. Rhyperior is here because of the anime, pretty straightforward. As for Snorlax, I have it here because it's a tough Pokemon that evolves from the Gen 4 Munchlax, and it's a Pokemon his son Barry uses. I love making little connections like that. Now, just because we're done with the Battle Frontier doesn't mean we're completely done with Sinnoh just yet. I want to end this video off with one last group of Sinnoh trainers, the Stat Trainers. These are the trainers you team up with across the Sinnoh region and can eventually battle at the survival area's battleground. They're called Stat Trainers because they all specialize in a specific Pokemon stat. I decided to take that one step further and give their teams Pokemon typings that are best with the specific stat that they specialize in. Let's start off with Cheryl. She specializes in HP, so I made her team consist of normal and fairy types, even though yes, I know fairy didn't exist back then, but the remakes are coming. Her team will be Snorlax, Slacking, Wigglytuff, Licky, Azumarill, and Blissey. These are some of the normal and fairy types that have the highest HP base stat. Mira.
She specializes in special attack, so her types will be Psychic and Water. Her team will be Espeon, Gardevoir, Almastar, Gorobis, Starmie, and Alakazam. Riley. He specializes in attack, and since his ace is Lucario, I decided his main typings should be Fighting and Steel. So his team will be Metagross, Breloom, Scizor, Gallade, Hitmonlee, and Lucario. Buck. He specializes in defense and special defense, so his typings will be a mix of Dark, Rock, and Ground. His team will be Umbreon, Spiritomb, Tyranitar, Swampert, Golem, and Claydol. And finally, Marley. She specializes in
Speed. I am Speed.
So her typings will be Fire and Electric. Her team will be Electrode, Raichu, Infernape, Manectric, Rapidash, and Arcanine. Pretty cool team if you ask me.
Following Sinnoh is the Unova region.
First up are the gym leaders, starting with Silent, Chili, and Cress. Yeah, I'm just gonna cut to the chase. These three should have just been a triple battle with Pansage, Pansear, and Panpour. Like, this is the gen that introduced the mechanic. Why didn't they do this? Lenora. Her team will be Herdier, Hoot Hoot, and Watchog. Have you ever noticed how owls are sometimes associated with books? This is because in Greek mythology, owls often symbolize wisdom. So because Lenora's gym is a library and libraries have books, Hoot Hoot is a perfect new addition. Pretty cool connection, right? Gym leader Charon. His team will be Pidove, Purloin, and Lillipup. I never liked how Charon's team is basically Lenora's, but smaller, so I decided to shake it up by having his team represent the first couple of Pokemon you'll encounter on a new Unova journey. His gym is a school after all, and it's all about teaching you the basics, right? Well, this is a great way to do that. Also, I like to think that this Purloin was bred from the Liepard he caught when he first started his journey. Roxy. Her team stays the same. It's Coughing, Whirlipede, and Trubbish. Next, Berg. His team will be Dwebble, Combee, and Leavanny. I added Combee here because it fits with Castelia Gem's Honeycomb theme in the original Black and White. It's a perfect new addition. Elisa. Her team from Black 2 and White 2 is honestly perfect, so I can't really change it. Now I know, it's another cop-out, but don't worry, cause from here on out, the gym leaders will be having 4 Pokemon, so there's definitely gonna be some changes going forward. Clay. His team will be Sandslash, Krokorok, Dugtrio, and Excadrill. Because Clay now has 4 Pokemon, I could have easily added his Palpitoad from Black and White to give him more type coverage, but it doesn't really fit with his mining theme. His team is all about digging, which is why Dugtrio is the best new addition here. Skyla. Now when it comes to her team, I don't really think her theme is just supposed to be about bird Pokemon. She's a pilot, so her team is supposed to reflect high-speed flight. You know, Pokemon that could keep up with her whenever she's flying her plane. So with that in mind, her team will be Skarmory, Unpleasant, Crobat, and Swanna. She had a Swoobat in Black and White, but I decided to replace that with the even faster Crobat. It would make for a great flying buddy. Bryson. His team will be Vanillish, Cryogonal, Celio, and Beartic. With Pokemon like Beartic and Cryogonal, it's safe to say that Bryson has a whole Arctic theme going on with his team. So the new addition is Celio, a Pokemon that's a perfect fit for the Arctic. I actually wanted to give him Walrein, but it evolves at a slightly higher level, so I opted for its pre-evolution instead. Drayden. Now when it comes to his team, I couldn't just give him any old dragon type and call it a day. I want his team to represent the tough and scaly side of dragon types, as they'd suit him a bit better. You know, Pokemon that fit very well alongside Haxorus. So his team will be Shelgon, Druddigon, Gabite, and Haxorus. Shelgon and Gabite are the newest members here, but I decided to keep them at their middle stage evolutions as to not make him too OP. Marlin. A way better water type gym leader than Cress. His team will be Mantine, Samurott, Golduck, and Caracosta. The new addition is Samurott. This choice is pretty obvious as he's a water type gym leader, so he should have a water type starter. As for Golduck, it's a Pokemon that's known to be an excellent swimmer, so it's a perfect choice for the swimmer Marlin. And now that we're done with the gym leaders, it's time to take a bit of a detour and go over the evil team, Team Plasma. Because there are 2 different versions of this team, I'll be going over the Pokemon both types of grunts would use. The original Team Plasma grunts should be using Patrat, Purloin, Woobat, Venipede, Yamask, Trubbish, and Pawniard. These are pretty standard Evil Team Pokemon. As for Team Plasma 2 or Neo Team Plasma or whatever, those grunts should be using Rattata, Purloin, Zubat, Sneasel, Yamask, Trubbish, and Cryogonal. To separate them from the original grunts, I wanted them to focus on older gen mons like the ones you'd be able to catch in the Unova sequels, but I also wanted to focus a bit on the ice typing as their goal is to freeze Unova in these games, which is why we have additions like Sneasel and Cryogonal. Now for the king of Team Plasma, N. His team will be Zoroark, Swoobat, Darmanitan, Caracosta, Archeops, and Reshiram. When it comes to which legendary goes to who, in most canons, N is the one who has Reshiram, while Hilbert has Zekrom. So that's the legendary I'm gonna give him. As for the new additions like Swoobat and Darmanitan, they're here because they're Pokemon N befriended as a child. So I'd think he used them once he becomes a trainer, even though he hates battling, but he has to do it for the game, which is ironic. Next is time for Colress. His team will be Metang, Electrode, Rotom Wash, Magnezone, and Klinklang. His original team was already pretty good honestly, but instead of having two Pokemon of the same evolutionary chain, I decided to replace Magneton with an Electrode as it's a Pokemon that fits perfectly with Colress's tech and mechanical theme. And finally, Ghetsis. His team should be Cofagrigus, Spiritomb, Toxicroak, Bisharp, Golurk, and Hydreigon. Like Cofagrigus, Spiritomb is a ghost type, and its general creepiness, especially in the eyes, just fits really well alongside Ghetsis' attire in both versions. As for Golurk, it's an ancient titan that I think would be a good fit when it comes to Team Plasma's medieval theme, especially when it comes to their castle. And now that I'm done with the evil team, it's time to move on to the Elite Four, who will be using 5 Pokemon by the way. Let's start with Chantal. Her team will be Cofagrigus, Bayonet, Mismagius, Jellicent, and Chandelure. This one wasn't too hard as it was a matter of mixing and matching some of the Pokemon she uses in rematches and in challenge mode during the sequels. Grimsley. His team will be Liepard, Weavile, Crocodile, Sharpedo, and Bisharp. Weavile's here cause come on, these two look perfect together. Then there's Sharpedo, who's here because Grimsley uses one when you rematch him in Black and White, also because of the Sharpedo ride he gives you in Sun and Moon, so that should definitely be a mainstay for him. Caitlyn. Her team will be Musharna, Hypno, Reuniclus, Gardevoir, and Gothitelle. Because her whole theme is about sleeping and dreaming, Hypno makes for a perfect choice because his whole thing is about hypnotizing people and putting them to sleep. As for Gardevoir, I have it here because I really wanted Caitlyn to have a Pokemon to represent her Sinnoh days. Unfortunately, Sinnoh doesn't have too many psychic types that could fit her, but it does have Gallade, which is in the same family as Gardevoir. So let's just say she caught it as a Ralts back when she was in Sinnoh. Marshall. His team will be Sawk, Throh, Mienshao, Emboar, and Conkeldurr. Emboar is the new addition as it's part fighting type, so it fits well with Marshall's team. So that's pretty easy. And now time for the champion of Unova, Alder. His team will be Buffalant, Escavalier, Excelgor, Druddigon, Braviary, and Volcarona. This was just a matter of choosing the Pokemon I think fit best based off the teams he has in the original Black and White and the sequel games. Can you believe he didn't have Braviary in the originals? That's a freaking crime. And now time for the champion I'm truly excited to talk about, Iris. Her team will be Hydreigon, Lapras, Druddigon, Flygon, Serperior, and Haxorus. Instead of giving Drayden a Flygon, I decided to remove it from his team so that Iris could have it instead. It's a cool yet elegant dragon that's a much better fit for Iris. As for Serperior, although it's not a dragon, it's a serpent which is often associated with dragons. Plus it does learn a few dragon type moves anyway, so it's still a great fit. And now before we get to the rivals, I want to first explain something about our protagonists Hilbert and Hilda. In order to explain some of the Pokemon I gave the rivals, I first gotta explain the starter I think fits best with the Black and White Pro tags. And for me, it's Oshawott. With the player character having Oshawott, that would leave Cheren with Snivy and Bianca with Tepig. And now with that out of the way, we can truly dive into the rivals teams. Cheren. His team will be Serperior, Simipour, Liepard, Shit Pheasant, Galvantula, and Haxorus. I don't really have a valid reason for adding Galvantula other than the fact that I think having an electric type would be cool for his team. Bianca. Her team will be Emboar, Simisage, Stoutland, Musharna, Zebstrika, and Mian Shao. Zebstrika's here to be a good electric type counterpart to Charon's Galvantula. I could see her having one, especially if she was inspired by Elisa kinda like she was in their first encounter in Nimbasa. And last but certainly not least, Hugh. When it comes to Black 2 and White 2, I believe Nate should have Tepig, Rosa should have Snivy, so that leaves Hugh with Oshawott. He did have a Samurott in the special Black 2 and White 2 trailer after all. So his team will be Samurott, Simisear, Gigalith, Flygon, Electros, and Buffalant. Now because Charon already had Shitfezin, I didn't want another rival in the same region to also have one as well. So instead, I decided to give him the Gigalith I didn't give Charon. This is mostly because of the color scheme. They're a perfect match.
We now arrive at the Kalos region, and as always, let's begin with the gym leaders, starting with
Viola. Her team will be Surskit, Beedrill, and Vivian. Because Surskit evolves into Masquerain, that means Viola's fully evolved team members are both bugs with wings, so Beedrill fits well. He's also here because of another reason that I'll soon reveal. Grant. His team will be Boldor, Aerodactyl, and Tyrant. His whole theme is about rock climbing, and I don't know about you, but Boldor kinda looks like a mini rock climbing wall. It fits really well with the aesthetic of this lost gym. As for Aerodactyl, he's here for the same reason I gave Viola a Beedrill, which I'll explain with our next entry. Karina. Her team will be Minfu, Halucha, and Mega Lucario. That's right, not normal, but Mega. One of the things that I and many others absolutely hate about X and Y is the fact that we're given this awesome mechanic of Mega Evolution, but none of the gym leaders use it. That's why I'll be giving every single gym leader and Elite Four member a Mega Evolution. In the games you face Viola and Grant before you have access to Megas, which is why they won't be having any. But I at least gave them Pokemon that are capable of Mega Evolving if you ever face them in a rematch in the Battle Chateau. And now with that in mind, this should make the rest of the teams in this video a lot more interesting. Ramos. His team will be Jumpluff, Go-Goat, and Mega Venusaur. This one is pretty straightforward. Out of the two grass type Megas in X and Y, Venusaur is the one that fits the most. Next, Clement. His team will be Dedenne, Heliolisk, and Mega Manectric. Now I get that Emolga's a pretty good Pokemon and all, but if you're gonna use an electric rodent, wouldn't it make more sense for Clement to have the one that's native to his region? Plus, in the anime he has one for his sister, so that's a no-brainer. As for his Mega, I went with Manectric because it's the Pokemon that would be the perfect counterpart to his Luxray in the anime. Valerie. Her team will be Floette, Sylveon, Aromatisse, and Mega Mawile. In the anime, Valerie uses a pretty annoying Spritzy. It fits with her overall theme, so I'm giving her the evolved form Aromatisse. As for Floette, it's another Pokemon that fits with her theme as well. Figured I'd give her more Colosmons to better represent her generation. And lastly, there's Mega Evolving the Mawile she already had. Solid team. Olympia. Her team will be Xatu, Delphox, Meowstic, and Mega Alakazam. Xatu is a Pokemon that's known for seeing the future, which is perfect for Olympia. As for Delphox, it's a starter that also happens to be part Psychic, so it should have a spot on this team as well. And then there's Mega Alakazam, probably the most Psychic out of all Psychic type Megas. Wulfric. His team will be Cryogonal, Avalugg, Aurorus, and Mega Abomasnow. I wanted to give Wulfric another Kalos Ice type, which is why Aurorus is here. As for Mega Abomasnow, he already had the normal version, so it was a very easy Mega to give, especially since he already had one in the anime. Great job, XY. And now that we're done with the gym leaders, it's time to go over the evil team of this region, Team Flare. These are the Pokemon I believe the Team Flare grunt should be using: Zubat, Houndour, Poochyena, Purloin, Woobat, Darumaka, and Litleo. It always kind of bothered me that Team Flare always used a bunch of random Pokemon types instead of focusing on fire, cause, you know, they're Team Flare, so I narrowed down their Pokemon to just Dark and Fire types, along with the basic grunt Pokemon like the Bats. Next, let's move on to the admins. Oops, I mean scientists, cause their admins are just glorified grunts. What I've done with the scientists is give them all a combination of the following Pokemon: Golbat, Mightyena, Liepard, and Swoobat. Each of them will have 2 of these Pokemon, along with their ace. First up is Aliana. Her team will be Swoobat, Liepard, and Houndoom. Because she's the redhead of the scientist, her ace is a fire type. Bryony. Her team will be Golbat, Liepard, and Cacturn. Because she's the green-haired one, her ace is a grass type. Celosia. Her team will be Swoobat, Mightyena, and Drapion. Because she has purple hair, her ace is a poison type. This was already one of her Pokemon, so it works out. And then there's Mabel. Her team will be Golbat, Mightyena, and Weavile. Because she's the blue-haired one, her ace is an ice type. Lastly, there's Xerosic. Because he's the head scientist for Team Flare, we get to have a bit more fun with his team. He'll have Crobat, Behem, Torkoal, and Malamar. Behem's an extraterrestrial psychic type that looks really good alongside Xerosic's Malamar. And I mean, look at the guy. A weird looking scientist deserves another weird looking Pokemon. As for Torkoal, it's here to give him at least one fire type to help represent the evil team. And now for the team leader, Lysander. His team will be Pyroar, Minchao, Darmanitan, Mandibuzz, and Mega Gyarados. I always hated how his team was pretty much the same as Cyrus from Team Galactic, so I decided to change things up. For instance, I gave him Mandibuzz instead of Honchkrow, and gave him a Darmanitan to give him more fire power because Team Flare needs more fire types. And now time for the Elite Four. And what better segue than to start off with Team Flare's Malva. Her team will be Talonflame, Torkoal, Chandelure, Pyroar, and Mega Houndoom. The new addition is an obvious one, it's her Mega Houndoom from the anime. Wixstrom. His team will be Klefki, Bisharp, Escavalier, Aegislash, and Mega Scizor. Because Wixstrom is a knight, medieval steel types like Bisharp and Escavalier are perfect fits for his team. And then there's Mega Evolving his Scizor, which the anime actually did. Again, good on ya, XY. Seabold. His team will be Clawitzer, Crawdaunt, Barbaracle, Gyarados, and Mega Blastoise. Crawdaunt's here to go alongside Clawitzer. As for the Mega, I went with his Mega Blastoise from the Mega Evolution specials. Drasna. Her team will be Noivern, Druddigon, Dragalge, Kingdra, and Mega Garchomp. Because she already had the Seahorse Dragon Dragalge, I figured I might as well give her the other Seahorse Dragon Kingdra. As for Mega Garchomp, it's really the only Dragon Mega from X and Y that fits her team, considering the other two, Ampharos and Charizard, only gain the typing temporarily. Plus, Charizard is just way too cool for her. And now time for the champion Diantha. Her team will be Florges, Carbink, Gourgeist, Pangoro, Goodra, and Mega Gardevoir. Florges fits really well with Diantha in my opinion, and I always felt like she should have had one. Plus, Diantha's name comes from a flower, so there's that. Speaking of names, when I hear Diantha, I can't help but think of Diancie, which is related to Carbink, which is why Carbink is here. It's not the best reasoning, but you know, that's my own headcanon. Then there's Pangoro. Might seem like a weird choice, but this Pokemon is known for being protective and fighting against bullies. It would make a great bodyguard for the famous actress Diantha. And now that we're done with the league trainers, it's time to wrap things up with the rivals. Now this is no secret, but the XY rivals suck. So here's my best attempt at making their shitty teams a lot better. Trevor. His team will be Raichu, Aerodactyl, Vivian, Saucebuck, and Florges. Because Trevor's whole goal involves filling the Pokedex, I thought it'd be cool to give him Pokemon that are known for having unique variations, as I feel like that's something he'd be interested in. He already had Florges, who has a different color depending on the flower, so he'll also have the seasonal changing Saucebuck, and Vivian, a Pokemon with different wings depending on where you caught it from. Tierno. His team will be Bellossom, Hawlucha, Spinda, Altaria, and Ludicolo. Because his goal is to have a dance team, I decided to give him Pokemon that all represent a specific dance move. We have Bellossom for Petal Dance, Hawlucha for Feather Dance, Spinda for Teeter Dance, Altaria for Dragon Dance, and Ludicolo for Rain Dance. He actually got a Ludicolo in the anime, so again, good on ya, XY anime. Now time for the more important rivals, Shauna, Serena, or Callum. Or Calum, I'm not really sure, I'm just gonna call him Callum. I believe Callum's canonical starter should be Froakie, while Serena gets Fennekin, and Shauna gets Chespin. Now something interesting about these characters is that they should technically have a Kanto starter as well. When you get your Kanto starter from Professor Sycamore, your rival and Shauna receive one as well, but they never use it, which is dumb. While I believe each of the characters should have the Kanto starter that is weak against their Kalos starter for type coverage. So that means Callum gets Charmander, Serena gets Bulbasaur, and Shauna gets Squirtle. And now with that out of the way, we can get into their full teams. First up is Shauna. Her team will be Chestnut, Blastoise, Delcatty, Furfrou, and Sylveon. Furfrou is here because Shauna has one in the manga. As for Sylveon, she actually pulls up with one in the Battle Mason. I think it works well with her, especially since Callum and Serena will be having an evolution of their own. Now time for Serena! Her team will be Delphox, Venusaur, Vaporeon, Female Meowstic, Clefable, and Mega Absol. This will be the female counterpart to Callum's team, which will be Greninja, Charizard, Jolteon, Male Meowstic, Gengar, and Mega Absol. When it comes to evolutions, they should have one of the Kanto ones that are super effective against your starter. Then there's Callum's Gengar. It's here because one, he uses one in the manga, and it's also a perfect counterpart to Serena's Clefable, cause, you know, the old theory of Gengar being Clefable's shadow and whatnot. And with that, looks like we're done. Just kidding, AZ. His team will be Golurk, Sigilyph, Solrock, Klefki, Aegislash, and Floette. Solrock is here to represent one of the mazes at Parfum Palace. As for Klefki, it's here because I imagine AZ would have one to help keep hold of the key to the ultimate weapon, which he always has on him. Lastly, there's Aegislash, a Pokemon known for attending and recognizing kings. It's a perfect fit for the former king of Kalos. Now, although I wish I came up with this myself, I actually didn't. Shout out to my good friend Kuroblitz for helping me out with this last entry. If you're into awesome theories or discussions related to the Pokemon anime, then he's definitely worth checking out. Link to his channel will be in the iCard and description. Now, this is where I would do the Battle Mason bosses, but let's be honest, nobody really gives a shit about them, so I'm not gonna waste my time.
Alright, it is time for Alola.
Now, when it comes to the Alola games, they don't really have gym leaders. So instead, we'll be going over the trial captains and kahunas in the order you encounter them. So that means we'll be starting with Captain Elima. His team will be Yungoos, Smeargle, and Eevee. His original two team members are honestly a perfect fit, so the only new addition here is Eevee, based on the one he uses in the anime. Next is Hala. His team will be Makuhita, Throh, and Crabrawler. Although not a sumo wrestler like Makuhita, Throh still makes for a great new addition. It's a fighting type with its own unique fighting style, and shares a similar body type to Makuhita and Hala himself. Lana. Now, although you don't battle her when you take on her trial, I always imagined you would. So this would be her team if battling her was part of the trial. Brionne, Dewpider, and Wishiwashi. Brionne is here to give her the water type Alolan starter, much like her anime counterpart. And as for Dewpider and Wishiwashi, they are here because they represent the water types you can catch at her trial site. Kiawe. His team will be Alolan Marowak, Magmar, and Turtonator. Marowak and Turtonator are perfect choices for him thanks to the anime. But Magmar is here because there's a lot of Magmar all around his hometown of Paniola, so that's a nice way to represent his home. Mallow. Her team will be Fomantis, Bellossom, and Steenie. Fomantis is here to represent the evolutionary line of the Totem Laurentis she has you face. And as for Bellossom, I mean, come on. It's a hula dancing grass type. That's a perfect choice for the Alolan grass type expert Mallow. Olivia. Her team will be Carbink, Alolan Graveler, and Midday Lycanroc. Carbink and Graveler are here to represent Olivia's job of being a jewelry specialist. As for her Lycanroc, I decided to go with the Midday form like in the anime because it's a far better fit than the edgy Midnight form they gave her in the games. I think that Pokemon is better off with someone else. Sophocles. His team will be Togedemaru, Rotom, and Vikavolt. Now, Sophocles is all about programming and inventing, so I think giving him a Rotom would be a perfect fit since that's the Pokemon that's all about technology. Plus, Sophocles always seemed to have an interest in them in the anime anyways. Acerola. Her team will be Mimikyu, Banette, and Palossand. Banette is the new addition. It's here to go alongside Mimikyu since they're both dull-like ghost types. If Acerola can have a Mimikyu, then I definitely see her showing some love to the abandoned doll Banette. Nanu. His team will be Absol, Crocodile, Pangoro, and the Alolan Persian. Absol and Pangoro are here because they're much like Nanu. They seem mean and evil on the outside, but actually aren't that bad. Absol is always blamed for causing natural disasters when in fact it's the one that's warning people of it, and Pangoro is a Pokemon that righteously stands up to bullies. They make for great additions to Officer Nanu's team. Mina. Her team will be Shiinotic, Comfey, Wigglytuff, and Ribombee. Comfey is here because it's an Alolan Fairy type that Mina doesn't get for some reason. She should have had one. It fits well with Mina's super chill personality. As for Wigglytuff, it's here to stay to represent at least one Fairy type she could have caught while in Kanto. Hapu! Her team will be Golurk, Claydol, Flygon,
and Mudsdale. The new addition is Claydol. It's an ancient Pokemon apparently made by primitive people. I think it works well with Hapu since she's the kahuna of the ancient and historical Pony Island. Now as a quick little bonus, let's do Ryuki. His team will be Gabite, Drampa, Druddigan, and Turtonator. The new addition is his Druddigan from the anime, as it's implied that Ryuki could be from Unova. Man, there's a lot of anime in this video, isn't there? And with that, we wrap up the Trial Captains and Kahunas, and now move on to the evil team, Team Skull. These are the Pokemon I believe their grunt should be using. Alolan Rattata, Zubat, Alolan Grimer, Spinarak, Venipede, Scraggy, Yungoos, and Grubbin. Their main specialties are bug and poison types, since those are the types used by Plumeria and Guzma. And then there's Scraggy, the perfect little hoodlum for the Team Skull thugs. Next is Plumeria. Her team will be Crobat, Ariados, Alolan Muck, and Salazzle. Alolan Muck is a Pokemon she uses in the post-game once Team Skull is disbanded, well she should have had one from the beginning. As for Ariados, it fits with her poison specialty. I imagine Guzma giving it to her. Speaking of which, it's time for your boy Guzma. His team will be Pinsir, Scizor, Scolipede, Vikavolt, and Golisopod. Instead of having Ariados, I gave that to Plumeria so that Guzma could have Scolipede, a much more fearsome poison bug. And then we have Vikavolt. It's here to give Guzma at least one more Alolan bug type. It's a pretty tough one, so I was surprised to find out that Guzma doesn't have one. Now you might think that's it for the antagonist of Alola, but next we have the Aether Foundation. These are the Pokemon I see the employees using. Alolan Sandshrew, Diglett, Geodude, Grimer, Trumbeak, Oranguru, and Passimian. Because Aether Paradise is meant to be a sanctuary for Pokemon, I could see the employees collecting the Alolan forms as they're pretty unique. Then there's Oranguru and Passimian. Not really much of an explanation here other than the fact that they're intelligent Pokemon, so they might seem pretty rare and, you know, they're also version exclusives. Oh yeah, and Trumbeak. That's their Zubat. Faba. His team will be Hypno, Bruxish, Malamar, and Alakazam. The new addition is Malamar because it's an evil psychic type. Great fit for the creepy and evil Faba. And then there's Lusamine. Her team will be Clefable, Mismagius, Milotic, Lurantis, Beware, and Nihilego. Lusamine's team seems to be made up of feminine looking Pokemon. I wanted her to have at least one more Alolan Mon aside from Beware, which is why Lurantis is here instead of Lilligant. And then there's Nihilego, a Pokemon I feel like she should have had during your final battle with her in Ultra Deep Sea. I mean, yeah, it was cool to see her in her Mother Beast form, but what was the point if you couldn't battle an actual Ultra Beast, you know? And now that we're done with the antagonist, it's time for the Elite Four, starting with Hala. His team doesn't change much, it's pretty much just adding the throw we gave him in the beginning of the video. So next is Molayne. His team will be Alolan Dugtrio, Magnezone, Bronzong, Alolan Sandslash, and Metagross. Alolan Sandslash is a Pokemon he uses in the original Sun and Moon, but doesn't in the Ultra games. I feel like it works well because it's a Pokemon from Ula Ula, the island Molayne is from. As for Bronzong, it's here to go alongside his Metagross. Elite Four Olivia. Her team will be Carbink, Probopass, Alolan Golem, Armaldo, and Lycanroc. This one is just a matter of mixing her Elite Four team with the new team I gave her earlier. Elite Four Acerola. Her team will be Mimikyu, Banette, Delmise, Jellicent, and Palosand. Because Acerola has a Palosand and Delmise, two ghost types that can be found near the ocean, I can see her having a Jellicent as well, as it's a ghost type that can be found in the water. Kahili. Her team will be Skarmory, Swanna, Oricorio, Braviary, and Toucanon. This team keeps the Skarmory from the Sun and Moon games and also gives her a Swanna cause, you know, her hair kinda looks like a Swanna. And now it's time for the champion equivalent of the Alola region, Professor Kukui. His team will be Lycanroc, Hawlucha, Turtonator, Alolan Ninetales, Kommo-o, and Incineroar. Hawlucha's here because I think he'll be the perfect Pokemon to represent Kukui's alter ego, the Masked Royal. They are both wrestlers after all, and if that wasn't enough, I believe his canonical starter should be Incineroar, just like in the anime. As for the rest of his team, because Kukui is supposed to be the strongest trainer in Alola, and he is the one to establish the Alola League, I thought it would be cool if the rest of his team each represented one of the 4 islands of Alola. So we have Lycanroc for Melee, Turtonator for Akala, Ninetales for Ula Ula,
And finally, Kommo-o for Pony. Yeah, I know you can't catch Turtonator and Akala, but still, you know, it's the Alola Pokemon that perfectly represents Willow Volcano. Now let's conclude with the rivals. First up is Hao. His team will be Tauros, Alolan Raichu, Slurpuff, Noivern, Crabominable, and Decidueye. Although the game makes Hao choose a starter that is weak to the player, I don't really think it should be that way. The starter that fits best with Elio and Celine in my opinion is Poplio. That way, Hao can get Rowlet and Kukui gets Litten. That way, Hao could get his Decidueye like in the anime because they make such a good pair. As for Slurpuff, it's here because of Hao's love for sweets like Malasada's. Raichu's whole thing is that it loves pancakes, so I think he'd have another Pokemon that has a thing for sweets. Last but not least, we have Gladion. His team will be Crobat, Umbreon, Weavile, Zoroark, Midnight Lycanroc, and Silvally. When combining Gladion's in-game team and his anime team, you'll notice they all have a few similarities. Most of them either A, evolve in the night like Weavile and Lycanroc, or B, evolve via friendship like Crobat and Silvally. What brings this team all together is Umbreon, because it's a Pokemon that requires both the nighttime and friendship to evolve. So honestly, these all work well for him.
And now that brings us to Sword and Shield's Galar region.
Gym leaders are back in this region, so let's start off with them. First up is Milo. His team will be Applin, Skidoo, and Eldegoss. Milo's team is kinda lame because it's literally just the Gossifleur line, so I decided to give him an Applin since he ends up having a Flapple or Appleton by the postgame. And since he spends his time wrangling Wooloo, I figured giving him a Skidoo would be kinda cool since goats are sorta related to sheeps. Nessa. Her team will be Arrokuda, Drizzile, and Dreadnought. The new addition is Drizzile. I think it would be a great fit for Nessa, especially since its final evolution Inteleon is a very slender Pokemon that could work well for modeling, which is what Nessa does. Kabu. His team will be Ninetales, Torkoal, and G-Max Centiskorch. Because Kabu is from the Hoenn region, I figured he should have at least one Hoenn fire type, so that's why we got Torkoal here. B. Her team will be Hitmontop, Sawk, Grapploct, and G-Max Machamp. Grapploct, or even its pre-evolution Clobbopus, is a Pokemon I honestly thought she would have had during your gym battle against her because it's a perfect fit, but she doesn't. It isn't until the Champions Cup that she actually uses one. I mean, even in the anime they gave her one, so I think she should have one from the beginning. As for Sawk, it's here because it's a Karate Pokemon which is perfect for the Karate Master B. Alistair. His team will be Galarian Yamask, Dusclops, Cursula, and G-Max Gengar. I originally wanted him to have Duskull since Alistair's mask kinda looks like one, even though I know it's meant to be a Galarian Corsola, but Duskull might be too weak to have at this point, so instead he'll have a Dusclops. It all works out since Alistair uses a Dusknoir later on. Opal. Her team will be Granbull, Aromatisse, Galarian Weezing, and G-Max Alcremie. Granbull is a perfect Pokemon for Opal. Not only is it a pink fairy type, but its pre-evolution Snubbull is based off the English Bulldog. And Opal is literally an old English lady, so it fits. As for Aromatisse, Opal also kinda looks like one, so yeah. Gordy. His team will be Stonejourner, Crustle, Kabutops, and G-Max Colossal. Crustle will be replacing Shuckle, as it's a rock and bug type that I feel can do a bit more damage. Plus, it looks more rocky than Shuckle. As for Kabutops, I think it's a much cooler rock and water type than Barbaracle. It's a much better fit for the cool guy Gordy. You can also catch fossil Pokemon at the Crown Tundra, so it isn't a total stretch. Melanie. Her team doesn't change as all her Pokemon perfectly represent what's available in Galar. That was easy. I kinda sounded like the Staples button.
That was easy.
Now before we finish off the gym leaders, let's first go over the evil team. Team Yell. These are the Pokemon I believe their grunt should be using. Murkrow, Galarian Zigzagoon, Stunky, Purloin, Scraggy, Nickit, and Toxel. Because Team Yell are actually Dark-type gym trainers, it only makes sense that they specialize in Dark types. The only exception is Toxel, as it and its evolution Toxtricity fit very well with Team Yell's theme and design. And now it's time for Piers, who's technically the boss of Team Yell. His team will be Scrafty, Malamar, Toxtricity, and Obstagoon. The new addition is Toxtricity. Again, although it isn't a Dark type, it's a Pokemon that fits perfectly with Spike's It fits with the dark type city. There. Pierce is a punk rock musician, so it only makes sense for him to have the punk Pokemon as well. He does use one in the post game, but he should have had one all along. Raihan. His team will be Flygon, Sandaconda, Tyrantrum, and Gmax Duraludon. Because Raihan rocks a weather team, specifically a sandstorm team, I think Tyrantrum is a perfect new addition. Not only is he a dragon type, so his main team's typing stays consistent, but it's also part rock type, so it's gonna resist sandstorms like the rest of his team. And now it's time for the true antagonist of Galar, Macrocosmos. These are the Pokemon they should be using: Galarian Meowth, Magneton, Electrode, Electrike, Clang, Galarian Stunfisk, Klefki, and Cuffant, or Cufant, whatever. I know Macrocosmos specializes in steel types, but I decided to add the electric typing as well since a large part of their business is involved with technology. Pokemon like Magneton and Clang perfectly represent this. Oleana. Her team will be Frostlass, Sarina, Mawile, Milotic, and Gmax Garbodor. Much like Lusamine and Alola, Oleana seems to specialize in feminine-looking Pokemon, minus Garbodor. Well, I decided to give her a Mawile since it fits with the theme as well, while also being part steel type, which is the main specialty of the organization. Chairman Rose. His team will be Berserker, Klinklang, Excadrill, Aggron, and Gmax Copperajah. It's revealed by Oleana that Rose actually used to work in a coal mine before he became the big bad businessman we know him to be. So I figured giving him steel types like Aggron and Excadrill that are known for their digging skills would be perfect. Berserker with his claws and Copperajah with his trunk also fit along with that as well. I figured making his steel type team stick with a theme would make it differ a lot more from his brothers, who we will get to eventually. And now time for Champion Leon. His team will be Aegislash, Haxorus, Gallade, Escavalier, Dragapult, and Gmax Charizard. When it came to Galar's champion, I noticed a good amount of his team shared a weaponry theme. We got Aegislash with the Sword and Shield, Haxorus the Axe, and Dragapult the Catapult Stealth Bomber. So with that in mind, I decided the rest of his team should share the same theme as well. That's why we got Gallade with his Blade Elbows and Escavalier with his Jousting Lances. With this team, now it's truly a champion time. And now it's time for the rivals, starting with Leon's younger brother, Hop. His team will be Cinderace, Double, Boltund, Gmax Corviknight, Sirfetch'd, and Zamazenta. When it came down to the starters, I always believed that Hop should have Scorbunny, which is why Cinderace is, well, his ace. Boltund is here because although he does get one for a bit, he doesn't really keep it. I imagine he would though after being inspired by Sonia's Yamper. He does become her assistant after all. Then there's Sirfetch'd. It's another Sword and Shield Pokemon that I can imagine Hop having to be more like Leon and his Aegislash. Lastly, Zamazenta. It's the legendary that fits Hop the most, while the protagonist gets Zacian. Marnie. Her team will be Morpeko, Liepard, Gothitelle, Toxicroak, Toxtricity, and Gmax Grimmsnarl. Much like Piers, I believe Toxtricity is a perfect fit for the trainers of Spikemuth, so that's why it's on Marnie's team. As for Gothitelle, I mean, it's a goth Pokemon, Marnie is kind of a goth girl, so it works. Bede. His team will be Galarian Rapidash, Granbull, Gardevoir, Reuniclus, Mr. Rhyme, and Gmax Hatterene. Granbull is here because I imagine Opal giving him one once he begins training under her. As for Mr. Rhyme, it's here because its first stage Mime Jr. is both Psychic and Fairy, the types Bede typically uses, so I can see him using a Mime Jr. that ends up fully evolving into a Mr. Rhyme. Clara. Her team will be Dustox, Salazzle, Scolipede, Galarian Weezing, and Galarian Slowbro. Dustox is here because Clara's bow thing is literally a Dustox. Remember when we thought there'd be a Galarian Dustox? Those were the days. As for Salazzle, it's a sassy looking Pokemon that's a good match for Clara's personality in my opinion. Avery. His team will be Orbeetle, Alakazam, Grumpig, Oranguru, and Galarian Slowking. Orbeetle is here because it's another Galarian Psychic type, pretty straightforward. Then there's Grumpig, a Pokemon known for being a dick because it uses its psychic powers to control others. Great fit for Avery, who's also kind of a dick. Then we have Oranguru, another big brain psychic type. Again, pretty straightforward. Lastly, there's Galarian Slowking as his ace.
Now I get that the Crown Tundra wasn't out when Avery and the Isle of Armor was first released, but I really hate that they just gave him a Galarian Slowbro like Clara. This was fixed when the Crown Tundra DLC came out, but then they gave the same thing to Clara as well. I prefer that both Slowpoke evolutions were separate from one another. Now time for Mustard. His team will be Luxray, Swanna, Lightbird, Sandaconda, Kommo-o, and Urshifu. Now I know Mustard's team might look a little weird, but trust me, it's about to make a whole lot of sense. Because Mustard is a Kung Fu master, I decided he should have a team that represents the 5 animals of Shaolin Kung Fu. We've got Luxray representing the tiger, even though it's not really one but Mustard already had it. Swanna representing the crane, Lightbird the leopard, Sandaconda the snake, and finally Kommo-o the dragon. Pretty epic reference if you ask me. Peony. His team will be Scizor, Magnezone, Ferrothorn, Galarian Stunfisk, Corviknight, and Copperajah. Ferrothorn is here because I swapped it for the Aggron I gave Rose. Magnezone is here to be a counterpart to Rose's Klinklang, and Stunfisk and Corviknight are here to give Peony some more Galarian Steel types. He was a previous champion, so he deserves a full team. Last and least, we have... I'll be going over their teams as one, so they should have Doublade, Bronzong, Rampardos, Bastiodon, Sirfetch'd, and Phalanx. So with their Pokemon being counterparts to one another, one being offensive while the other defensive, the new additions are Rampardos and Bastiodon since they fit the roles perfectly. And that wraps up all the new team changes I'd make to all their major Galar trainers. And now we go back in time, all the way back to the ancient Hisui region. Let's begin with the Wardens, and me oh my, first up is Mai. Her team will be Teddiursa, Munchlax, and Wyrdeer. Mai is the first major Warden you encounter, and already uses a Munchlax, so I think it makes perfect sense for her to specialize in the normal type. She's also the Warden for Wyrdeer, which is an added bonus, and is exactly why I decided to give her one as well. FYI, I'll be giving all the Wardens their noble Pokemon, so don't be too surprised about that going forward. Lastly, there's Teddiursa, who was added because of Mai's Ursaring design on her outfit. Next up is Lian. His team will be Dugtrio, Hisuian Sliggoo, and Kleavor. Lian's whole theme revolves around digging, much like his descendant Clay, so Dugtrio is the perfect addition to work alongside Sliggoo. As for Kleavor, it's the noble that Lian's in charge of, and is a Pokemon that would be great for digging thanks to its badass axes. Calaba, or Calaba, I don't know. I decided to go with a nature theme since she's always carrying around those plants. So her team will be Bibarel, Staravia, and Ursaluna. These are all normal types with a different typing that represents a different aspect of the earth. Ursaluna for land, Bibarel for sea, and Staravia for air. Arezu. Her team will be Kirlia, Misdreavus, and Hisuian Lilligant. Hisuian Lilligant doesn't need much explanation, but as for Kirlia and Misdreavus, they have hair, and Arezu likes to style hair. It makes sense, right? Well, Kirlia actually has even more reason to be here since it shares a dancing theme with Hisuian Lilligant. Iceken. His team will be Mantike, Lumineon, and Basculegion. Since Iceken lives by the sea, I gave him a water type team. Mantike is a pretty common Pokemon in the Cobalt Coastlands, so that makes it an easy pick. And as for Lumineon, I mean, it's a Pokemon that needs more love, and I don't really know if I'll ever get the chance to talk about it again, so here it is. Nah, but in all seriousness, Iceken has a fear of ghost types, so a Lumineon that illuminates would be a perfect partner to ward off any ghost types at night. Paulina. Her team is Vulpix, Rapidash, and Hisuian Arcanine. As the Warden of Arcanine, who also watches over a Growlithe, it makes sense for her to be a Fire-type specialist. It adds even more to the forbiddenness of her relationship with Iceken. Not only are they from different clans, but they also like contrasting types. Vulpix can be found around the same area you find Growlithe. And as for Rapidash, I just think it's a really majestic Fire-type I can see Paulina riding. Ingo. His team will be Magnezone, Gliscor, and Sneasler. This one was a bit tricky at first, but I ultimately decided to go with Pokemon that are reminiscent of his team from his former life. Magnezone is supposed to be his Klinklang, Gliscor is supposed to be his Crustle, while Sneasler is just the noble that he's in charge of. Then there's Melly. His team will be Skuntank, Dustox, Drapion, and Hisuian Electrode. Electrode is the noble that Melly watches over, so that's a duh. But as for Dustox, I decided to add it because Melly specializes in poison types, and it's a Pokemon that can be somewhat elegant and graceful thanks to its vibrant colors, which I think works well with the pompous Melly. I hate him. Sabi. Now it's pretty obvious that Sabi's supposed to be a Psychic type specialist, considering she's the warden of Hisuian Braviary, and is also said to have some type of clairvoyance. Supposedly. So why the heck they gave her this team? No. Sabi's new team will be Mr. Mime, Bronzong, and Hisuian Braviary. Mr. Mime evolves from the Sinnoh native Mime Jr., while Bronzong can be found in the Snow Point Temple, which is where Sabi gives you the ability to fly with Braviary. Carrick. His team will be Mamoswine, Walrein, and Hisuian Avalugg. As the ancestor of Wulfric, it makes perfect sense for him to use ice types. I decided to replace his Frostlass with Mamoswine, however, as I think it fits his tough personality a lot better. As for Walrein, it's here to tease Garrett's potential connection to Crash or Wake as well. It's still an ice type, but also part water. Now time for the clan leaders, Adaman and Irida. Starting with Adaman, his team will be Leafeon, Umbreon, Vaporeon, and Dialga, while Irida's team is Glaceon, Espeon, Flareon, and Palkia. There really wasn't much to change here since their whole theme is that they use evolutions that are counterparts to each other, so instead the big change is giving them the legendaries they've been worshipping, Dialga and Palkia. My headcanon is that when Arceus decides to be nice enough to send the player character back to their home time, they'll leave Dialga and Palkia with them. And now time for these three, or as I like to call them, Hisuian Team Rocket, cause they're annoying as fuck. Clover. Her team will be Tangrowth, Abomasnow, and Frostlass. With Abomasnow being her only Pokemon, I decided to give her two more Pokemon to reflect both of its typings. Tangrowth for Grass and Frostlass for Ice, which is another Pokemon her descendant Candace uses. Coin. Her team will be Medicham, Toxicroak, and Overquill. This time, the team will be representing Toxicroak's fighting and poison typing, Medicham for fighting, and Overquill for poison. Charm. Her team is Gengar, Nidoqueen, and Rhydon. This one is the reverse. I added Nidoqueen since it's a Kantomon that has both the qualities of Gengar and Rhydon, being both a poison and ground type. Now time for the Galaxy team, starting with Zisu. Her team will be Infernape, Ambipom, Lopunny, and Luxray. This is basically a mix of her normal team and her Path of Tenacity team, which is based off of Flint's team. Next is Benny. His team will be Ninjask, Gallade, Gardevoir, and Weezing. Gardevoir and Gallade stayed to connect Benny to Wally, but Ninjask and Weezing are here to fit with Benny's ninja theme. Ninjask is literally a ninja, while Weezing represents the smokescreen ninjas use to disappear. Commander Komodo. His team will be Snorlax, Heracross, Hariyama, Hisuian Samurott, and Hisuian Gudra. Because Komodo is a warrior, I gave him Hisuian Samurott. He also gets Hariyama, a straight up sumo Pokemon to reflect Komodo's sumo moves, as well as Hisuian Gudra, who's a big, tough, and tanky mon like his Snorlax. Then there's Akari and... wait, Ray? I'm doing this on the fly, Gamefly. Akari and Ray. I don't really know, they're not that relevant to be honest. But what the heck, I'll give it a try. Their teams will be Hisuian Typhlosion, Torterra, Staraptor, Clefable, and Pachirisu. First of all, is anyone else getting tired of the rivals getting Pikachus? Cause I am. Give them the Sinnoh Pikachu at the very least. Next, they should have gotten a Hisuian starter that you didn't choose. This team is going off the idea that you chose Rowlet. Lastly, why not add a Sinnoh starter as well since you can actually catch them here? For coverage, they should get one that's strong against their Hisuian starter. And last but not least, Volo. His team will be Empoleon, Lucario, Garchomp, Togekiss, Hisuian Arcanine, and Hisuian Zoroark. As awesome as the Volo fight might be, his team is pretty much a copy of Cynthia's, so to change that, I gave him Empoleon, a very royal Pokemon that I can see Volo using. And then there's Hisuian Zoroark, an evil Pokemon known for its illusions and hatred of the world. Much like Volo, whose Ginkgo Guild image was one big illusion, cause deep down he hates the current world, which is why he wants to meet Arceus to change it. They're a perfect match. But, feels like I'm forgetting something. Oh god! And now we jump back to the present, or future? To Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's Paldea region. Real quick, I just want to make it known that Penny, Arven, Sada, and Turo will not be getting new teams as they're honestly perfect the way they are. Everyone else is fair game though. So let's begin with the gym leaders. Starting with Katie. Her team will be Tarantula, Combi, and Terra Bug Teddiursa. The change here is giving her Combi. Since they create honey, it fits well with Katie's baker theme, as she'd probably use it to make pastries. Brassius. His team will be Bramblin, Florigato, and Grass Terra Sudowoodo. Bramblin is here because it fits much better with Brassius' thorny looking design, especially when it evolves into Bramblegast. As for Florigato, I just think he's really cool, and would be a much better option than random ass Petalil and Smoliv. I mean, if you just put them together, you can see that they radiate some similar energy, you know? Iono. Her team will be Kilowattrel, Magneton, Bellibolt, and Electric Terra Mismagius. I decided to evolve her Wattrel so it can be a bit stronger, and added Magneton to reference her weird, sentient Magnemite pins that totally should have been a regional Magnemite. Kofu. His team will be Veluza, Wugtrio, Tatsugiri, and Water Terra Crabominable. Ain't it weird how we have a sushi chef gym leader the same generation we get a sushi based Pokemon, yet he doesn't use it? Yeah, Kofu should have had Tatsugiri from the beginning. Larry! His team will be Komala, Herdier, the Dunsparce, and normal Terra Staraptor. I really like how Larry's team is just full of the most basic Pokemon you can think of, so giving him the most basic dog Pokemon would be a perfect fit as well. Herdier is literally just a dog. Rhyme. Her team will be Houndstone, Skeledirge, Goldango, and Ghost Terra Toxtricity. Skeledirge is a cool addition as it's based on a singer and uses a microphone based attack. As for Goldango, it's a perfect fit for Rhyme because it's a Pokemon you evolve by collecting lots of coins. And what do rappers like to rap about? Money. Tulip. Her team will be Espathra, Gothitelle, Farigiraf, and Psychic Terra Florges. Because Tulip is a model who focuses on beauty, Gothitelle is a great choice because it's based on an actual gothic fashion style. Grusha. His team will be Frostlass, Vanillux, Cetitan, and Ice Terra Altaria. Because Grusha's whole thing is that snowy mountains can be dangerous, the new additions help push that theme home. Vanilux's snow warning can cause devastating storms, while Frostlass takes advantage of the dangerous weather. Now time for the Team Star bosses, starting with Giacomo. His team will be Pawniard and Maschiff. Much like Team Star, Maschiff is a Pokemon that wants to be taken seriously, which is why he always has that goofy face. He does get Mabustiff in the postgame, but I just think he should have had it since the beginning. Mela. Her team will be Torkoal, Salandit, and Charcadet. Originally, Mela was bullied for her looks, so giving her a female Salandit is perfect since Salazzle is a Pokemon that's known for attracting male Salandit. As for Charcadet, it's been said that Mela evolved a bunch of them to power the Starmobiles, so why wouldn't she have one on the team? Atticus. His team will be Ariados, Glimmet, Toxicroak, and Grafaiai. These Pokemon fit Atticus' poisonous ninja theme. Toxicroak and Ariados are pretty obvious. Glimmet sets up toxic spikes with its ability, and Grafaiai is known for its paint, which is the main inspiration of Atticus' outfit. Ortega. His team will be Klefki, Mimikyu, Doxbun, and Tinkatuff. As the creator of the Starmobiles, it makes sense to give Ortega Tinker-based Pokemon like Klefki and Tinkatuff. As for Mimikyu, it's just desperately searching for love just like Team Star. Eri. Her team will be Hawlucha, Lucario, Pangoro, and Annihilate. Hawlucha fits with Eri's masked wrestler theme. As for Pangoro, it's a Pokemon known for being violent, but it's actually kind-hearted and stands up to bullies, much like Eri herself. Now let's move on to the Academy teachers, starting with Jacques. His team will be Mousehold, the Dunsparce, Farigiraf, Toedscruel, Wugtrio, and Rotom. Because Jacques is the biology teacher, I gave him a team that represents some of the more interesting biological Pokemon of Paldea. Mousehold gets unexplained new members and they all count as one Pokemon. The Dunsparce and Farigiraf are Paldean exclusive evolutions. The original fakes are here because they're Pokemon I'm sure Jacques would want to study and figure out why they look the way they do. And Rotom is here because Jacques developed the Dex app on the Rotom phone. Dendra. Her team will be Blazing Breed Tauros, Phalanx, Medicham, Passimian, Mienshao, and Quaquaval. This is basically just a more diverse fighting type team. Since Dendra is basically the gym teacher of the academy, I gave her the sporty Passimian. And since she's pretty agile and always moving, I gave her Mienshao and Quaquaval. Miriam. Her team will be Oinkologne, Comfey, Indeedee, Blissey, Audino, and Arboliva. Or Arboliva. Or Arboliv, whatever. Miriam is the school nurse and is trying to become a health teacher, so her team is just filled with Pokemon you'd associate with nursing. Rhyfort. Her team will be Gengar, Spiritomb, Cofagrigus, Zoroark, Oricorio, and Ceruledge. She's a history teacher, so this team is supposed to reflect that. Spiritomb, Cofagrigus, and Ceruledge cover the spooky history, while Oricorio represents the culture of Paldea. Kind of. Saguaro. His team will be Wigglytuff, Appletun, Leavanny, Alcremie, Goodra, and Darkspun. This team is meant to represent the basics that are taught in home economics. Appletun, Alcremie, and Darkspun represent cooking/baking, while Leavanny is known for sewing, which is another handy home skill. Salvatore. His team will be Alolan Raichu, Alolan Executor, Galarian Weezing, Berserker, Aqua Breed Tauros, and Clodsire. This one is pretty self-explanatory. Since he's the language teacher, Salvatore's new team is made up of regional variants. Time. Her team will be Midday and Midnight Lycanroc, Barbaracle, Stonejourner, Garganicle, and Cloth. The Lycanrocs represent the different time of days, while the other Pokemon are just segmented rock types made up of multiple parts. Cause you know, math. Clavel. His team will be Poltegeist, Oranguru, Abomasnow, Drampa, Rapska, and Skeledirge. His team was honestly perfect as it is, so there really wasn't much to change here, but this team is basically supposed to radiate Old Man Clavel energy. As for Skeledirge, it's just the starter I think fits him the most and makes his team look a lot more intense. And lastly, let's end it off with the Elite Four and Champion. Starting with Rika. Her team will be Whiscash, Flygon, Toedscruel, Clodsire, and Ground Terra Gallade. Flygon is here just to give Rika a much cooler ground type that's not like Camerupt or Dugtrio. Toedscruel is here to give Rika more Gen 9 representation, and Gallade is here cause she kinda looks like a Gallade, not gonna lie. Of course she's the ground type user though, so I had to give it the Ground Terra type. I also found it odd that the Elite Four don't have at least one different Pokemon type, you know, like the gym leaders where they took advantage of the Terra type change, so I'm bringing that back here. Poppy. Her team will be Corviknight, Copperajah, Orthworm, Tinkaton, and Terra Steel Golurk. Orthworm is a kind of funny looking Pokemon, so I can see Poppy loving it. Plus it's a Gen 9 Pokemon, so we need more of those on the team. As for Golurk, it's her new Terramon. Since it looks robot-like already, it kinda fits the Steel type theme, especially after terrestrializing. Larry again. His Elite Four team will be Staraptor, Talonflame, Kilowattrel, Flamigo, and Terra Flying the Dunsparce. Because Larry is so average, he has a bunch of early bird Pokemon for his flying team. As for the Dunsparce, I made it the Terra Pokemon this time since it has wings and Dunsparce can kinda fly, so when it terrestrializes it can truly be the flying type it's trying to be. I don't know. I think it's funny, it works. Hassel. His team will be Flapple, Dragalge, Cyclizar, Salamence, and Terra Dragon Lapras. Salamence is going to be replacing Baxcalibur, since I'm going to be giving that to someone else. Cyclizar is here to give him at least one Gen 9 Dragon, and as for Lapras, it's a Pokemon that's already Dragon-like, so it's a perfect fit to get a Dragon Terra type. And now for the moment you've all been waiting for, Geeta. Her team will be Glimmora, Espathra, Garganicle, Armarouge, Baxcalibur, and King Gambit. Glimmora is a lame-ass ace and works far better as her lead Pokemon. Although Avalugg is a defensive Pokemon, Garganicle is a much better choice since it can actually represent Paldea. Armarouge is here to replace random Go-Goat, and you know, it's a cool Pokemon, so why not make the Champions team much cooler? Baxcalibur is here because it's the pseudo, it belongs with the champion. And lastly, King Gambit will be here to end things off because with its ability, it would have been the sickest ace ever. Nemona. Her team will be Pawmot, Goodra, Cyclizar, Goldango, Palafin, and Meowscarada. Cyclizar and Goldango represent Nemona's travel across the Paldea region. Since she's already done the gym challenge before, that means she's had lots of adventures already. Since everyone in the Paldea region travels on Cyclizar, I imagine Nemona would have had one as well. And as for Goldango, I imagine Nemona would have collected enough coins to evolve it after her travels. Palafin is here just to give Nemona a really good Paldean Pokemon since she is champion level as well. Lastly, Meowscarada is the Paldean starter I believe fits Nemona the most. So give it to her, because I don't want it on my team. Alright, now although that's it for Paldea, this isn't the end for Scarlet and Violet. So let's move on to the characters introduced in the DLC. Kirin, specifically Kitakami Kirin. His team will be Poliwrath, Furret, Yanmega, Gliscor, Emboar, and Diplin. this team doesn't neglect his precious furry just yet. I decided to give him Emboar as I think it would be cool to give him a Unova starter from Blueberry Academy, only for him to replace it with the superior fire starter later down the line. Carmine. Her team will be Mightyena, Toucannon, Morpeko, Ninetales, Sinistcha, and Superior. This team combines her Kitakami and Blueberry Academy team, giving her the Pokemon that fit her personality the most. And speaking of which, that's why Superior is here. Like Kieran, this will be a starter she received from the Academy, and its regal personality fits perfectly with Carmine's smug and snooty attitude when you first meet her. Briar. Has no Pokemon and is utterly useless, so we're moving on to Perrin. Her team will be Hisuian Growlithe, Leafeon, and Luxray. I decided to give her another Sinnoh Pokemon to better reflect her home region. As a photographer, a Luxray with X-ray vision is perfect for discovering new photo subjects that could be hidden in the wilderness. And now we move on to Blueberry Academy. Starting with this director, Cyrano. His team will be Zebstrika, Mandibuzz, Gothitelle, Decidueye, Typhlosion, and Terra Dark Samurott. Since I split up the Unova starters between Kieran and Carmine, and because having all three starters of the same region is kinda boring, I decided to have a Terra Dark Samurott to be Cyrano's ace, as a nod to Hisuian Samurott. And then I followed suit by giving him the original versions of the rest of the Hisui starters. I think that'd be pretty cool. Finally, we have the Blueberry League. Now I do have to admit, making changes to these teams was kinda challenging since they're already near perfect. Each team aligns seamlessly with the trainer's themes, battle styles, and strategies. Still, I wanted to give it a shot and see if I could come up with at least one new addition for each. So here's what I came up with. Lacey. Her team will be Whimsicott, Granbull, Espeon, Alcremie, Primarina, and Terra Fairy Excadrill. The new addition is Espeon, who is replacing Galarian Slowbro as I think its cuter design fits better with Lacey's cutesy fairy theme. Minus Excadrill, that was from her daddy. Crispin. His team will be Rotom Heat, Talonflame, Scovillain, Zenmo Darmanitan, Magmortar, and Terra Fire Blaziken. Ain't it weird how Crispin had a perfect sun team but didn't run Chlorophyll on his Exeggutor? Bro was not cooking with that. But with that in mind, I decided to swap in Scovillain, a grass and fire type that fits his cooking theme much better. As for Darmanitan, it's included to give Crispin at least one Unova Pokemon, as well as covering the missing Psychic type that Exeggutor had. Amaris. Her team will be Skarmory, Alolan Dugtrio, Scizor, Porygon 2, Empoleon, and Metagross. Now I know Reuniclus is there to cover Amaris' weakness to fighting types, but it still feels out of place with her team's overall theme. Porygon 2 on the other hand fits much better. It looks like a toy robot and even learns Trick Room just like Reuniclus. Drayton. His team will be Goodra, Altaria, Haxorus, Sceptile, Kingdra, and Archaludon. Since Rain is a big part of Archaludon's strategy, I figured we could keep that going with Goodra's hydration ability. As for Altaria, it's here since it fits much better with the biome where you face Drayton. Flygon could never survive here. Also, I got rid of Dragonite since Kieran literally gets one as well. And speaking of which, last but not least, Champion Kieran. His team will be Dragonite, Politoed, Grimmsnarl, Incineroar, Hydrapple, and Pecharunt. Honestly, his original champion team is perfect as is, as it accurately represents what a sweaty VGC player would use. However, if I had to give Champion Kieran just one new Pokemon, it would definitely be Pecharunt. Remember those theories after the Teal Mask where we all thought that Kieran would be influenced or even possessed by the rumored Peach Pokemon? Ironically, everyone else ended up being possessed, but not him. How did this happen? Kieran's descent into madness combined with Pecharunt's influence was such a perfect setup. Too perfect it seems for even Game Freak to realize. Honestly, this should have happened. Imagine how epic it would have been to see Kieran use Pecharunt in a battle against your Ogerpon. That would have been absolutely insane.